should be this right here, Canon 29. Christians must not Judaize by resting on the Sabbath, but must work on that day. Regardless of what wisdom has or knowledge or enlightenment is before or after this statement right here means you should immediately remove yourself from this. Rather honor the Lord's day. Rather honor a day that man told you. Don't rest and honor the day that the creator of heaven and earth built into the earthly cycle and the weekly cycle specifically for you to rest. Do not rest upon that day. Do not rest in your Savior. Do not copy and do not chase after the author and perfecter of our faith, Yeshua HaMashiach, the Son of the living God, the one who created heaven and earth. Do not rest on that day. Rather, honor this day that man has told you. And not just that, guys, and when you do it, rest as a Christian. Think about this. Don't rest as a believer in the Messiah who is honoring the word of the Most High. No, rest on my day. And when you rest as a Christian. Not a believer in the Messiah, not one who puts their trust in the Son of Elohim, but as a Christian. And if any of you be found to be a Judaizer, what do you mean by Judaizer? One who rests on the Sabbath? That's a Judaizer. Christians must not Judaize, become a Judaizer, right? Become that person by resting on the Sabbath. So if any are you found to be resting on the Sabbath, then let them be anathema from the Messiah. Well, there are a couple of names here. And I know we've gone into this, and I know there's a huge argument of, well, it doesn't matter what name you call upon him. Sure. When my children come around the corner and they say, Mommy, can you help me? I know they're talking to me. I know that. Yep, I know that. I'm not mommy, but I know they're talking to me because they're young and they're children and their awareness is not all that up to par. But if someone comes into a room and says, Hey, Mark, can you come help me? I'm not going to look. Now, if I'm the only one in the room or I already know they need my assistance and help, I might be like, yeah, it's not Mark, it's Zach, but yes, I can assist you. Well, how many times can they come into the room calling me by another person's name before I'm finally like, you don't care enough to listen? Oh, I know him as this. That's fine. You can say that, but then you're not listening to the Ruach HaKodesh. You're not listening to the Spirit. So that's why in the prayer, I'm talking about titles that we place upon ourselves. Because a title gives you self-entitlement. If I'm the boss, I'm the boss. I run this place. I'm the boss. Are you really though? Because I'm sure there's a CEO. And is he really though? Because I'm sure there's like an owner. So we're sitting here like, oh, I'm the boss. I put a title on myself. I gain self-entitlement. I look down upon others, and I can't assimilate or relate to others. Something else we're going to get into when Paul speaks in the Corinthians. I have placed myself above others, and therefore I will always be looking down on others. If I rest on the Sabbath, I find peace. I can pray. I can understand. I can read. I can rest. My mind can reset. So when I go out into the world 6 days as a servant, as Yeshua told us, 6 days as a servant, I can mentally and physically prepare myself through my day of rest with him so that I can be a servant and I'm not self-entitled. I've not placed myself upon this pedestal. I'm not worried about ethnic or religious cleansing of the world. My cares are not for what my neighbor is doing or what the person down the street is doing or what Walmart is doing. My cares of this world are only what they need to be? Have I instilled my children and those around me with enough confidence and trust and knowledge and understanding in the scripture that they can say, I'm a believer of the Messiah? You call me a Christian, that's fine. You call me a Protestant, that's fine. You call me um, uh, a Torah observant, whatever, that's fine. You call me a Judaizer, or call me a Jew, that's fine. You can call me whatever you want. That's a name, that's a title that's been bestowed upon man via man. And we know when men put men up titles and uh, names and other things like that upon other men, that's the work of man. If we focus on what the Father had placed upon us, then we're not worried about the worries of this world, right? Our gold and our profit is no longer something found here upon earth, but our profit and our gold is something that's found up in the heavens. So really think about what is being said in these canons, right? Think about what is being said when we're looking at another. Oh, you're a Christian. Oh, it's awesome. Maybe we just start looking, say, oh, you're a believer in the Messiah? So am I. I'm a believer in the Messiah as well. And I'm also a believer in Jeremiah. Why? What do you mean, Jeremiah? Who's Jeremiah? Oh, I'm a believer in the Messiah, but I also believe in Jeremiah. And Jeremiah told us that we should ask for the ancient paths, the past of old, because we know that our fathers have gone wrong. I mean, Yeshua, I mean, the Messiah, he when he came onto the scene, he kind of told everybody, you've taken a lot of what my father has said and you've added unto it, and then you've even removed from it. And things that were not okay or not acceptable, you kind of told everybody they were. Or maybe you've just made it lighter, right? It's, well, I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess if you want to keep the Passover, I'm sure. I mean, it's not going to hurt. They've become enlightened by lightening the burden of being an obedient covenant keeper, right? No one's going to look at you back. Well, guys, we know he's married, but man, have you seen the ladies in the neighborhood? They're pretty attractive. So like, can we really be mad at him? Yeah, absolutely we can be mad at him. He's chosen to have a covenant and he's not keeping the covenant. Of course we can be mad at him. Of course we can look down upon his actions. Well, you got to meet them where they are. Absolutely. And Paul talks about this. We're going to talk about this today. Meeting people where they are, right? But there's a big, big difference, and there's a huge paradigm shift, right? Okay, right? If we're going to say we met him where are we when Yeshua meets us? Think about it. In the simplest, most easy way of terms, we're in a ditch, right? And 99.9% of that time, that ditch was hand dug. It wasn't a trap laid by others. Oh, we're gonna dig this ditch and they're gonna fall right into it. No, that was a ditch. We picked up the shovel and one by one, we went deeper and deeper and deeper into the hole that we've created. And at some point, we're like, wow, I need help and I cannot get out of this ditch by myself. And then guess what? We find Yeshua. And the Messiah shows us that he can pull us out of any ditch. So he meets us in the ditch, yes. And sometimes, like we're going to see in Paul, we jump into that person's ditch. Well, I know Yeshua will pull me out. And maybe if I go down in the ditch with this person, he can pull us both out. Right? So, yes, he meets us where we are. He finds us in the state we're in. But if he pulls us out of that ditch, are we in the same location, in the same mindset and in the same hole as when he found us? Or are we somewhere else? Think about that. Yes, he meet us where we are, but he doesn't leave us there, and we shouldn't stay there. Because then there'd be no reason for him to save us. So think about kind of that stuff as you read through these next few chapters in 1 Corinthians. So we'll begin in chapter 7. And think about, right, maybe write down, what does it mean to save? Think about that. If I'm on a boat and another person drives up and like, hurry, jump on, let me save you. From what? From save me from what? From relaxing on this boat on the lake? No, there's like a hole in the side of your boat. I can see it. And then we get real still and everybody gets quiet. I don't feel like I'm sinking. No, I can see it. I'm telling you right now, there's a hole in the side of your boat. You're gonna sink. Right? We can either, like Paul discussed previously, we can heed that warning, we can investigate. Are you sure? We can lean over the side of the boat, or we can just stand still in our pit and be like, I'm pretty comfortable. This is like the perfect shady spot. I think I'll just stay right here because I don't think I'm sinking. Right? Well, eventually that person has to move on, right? They have to move on to the next boat that the Father directs them to, or that the Messiah directs them to. And we're going to cover that too. So think about what it is to save. If somebody's being saved, what does that actually mean? All right. Chapter 7. And concerning the matters that you wrote to me. So the individuals of Corinth have wrote a letter to Paul asking him, remember this, his opinion. Hey, Paul, what do you think about laundry list of things? Paul says, concerning the matters in which you've written to me. So remember, for a little bit, Paul's answering questions that the people of Corinth have given him. He says, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. But because of whoring, let each one of you have his own wife, and let each woman have her own husband. And let the husband render to his wife what is due to her, and likewise also the wife of her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. And likewise, the husband does not have authority over his body, but the wife does. Remember, a marriage is a covenant. And a part of that covenant is that two flesh become one. And what Paul is saying in simple terms is, well, when you become one, you can't just do all of your own decisions. You don't just get to do whatever it is you want to do, because now you have another being that is cut into this covenant with you. So there are things, right, that your wife will do with the authority of her husband, the approval of her husband. And there are things the husband will do only with the authority or the approval of his wife. This mindset right here is a very, very, very simple breakdown of what it means to be one with Yeshua. We talked about this before. John 14, John chapter 8, John chapter 10, a lot of the Gospels. He says, I am one, when you let me in, right? My Father revealed me to you. You discovered me. You let me in. Once you let me in, I reveal unto you the Father. You didn't know my Father except through me. And you didn't know me only because my Father allowed you to know me. But because you've accepted me and brought me in, I have now brought in the Father because the Father is in me. And now that they are in us, there is an authority over a certain part of our body. Yes, we still have free will, but then there are things that are telling us no and telling us yes. It is good to do this, it is not good to do these things. So, just like when we get married, there's a certain part of us that we lose the permission or the authority over that thing because now it's a shared authority. So when I look and I'm like, hey, what do I do in this situation? Well, it's very simple if you recognize the shared authority of your own body with the master and with the creator, because then it's easy to lean upon them and their understanding, which is perfect in all ways. And it helps us make a decision, right? Like sometimes it's easy to be like, oh, my wife said I can't do that, than me just saying I can't do that, right? It's easy. And you can always use that excuse, right? Well, no, sorry. Guys, we can't do this stuff on Sabbath because the Father, it's his day and I'm not supposed to. Right? Yeshua says, cast your cares upon me, right? Put upon my yoke, for it is easy. So when we enter into covenant with another, part of our authority is handed over. When we enter into covenant with the Most High and we accept Yeshua, we accept the Ruach HaKodesh, the Spirit of truth, we accept the Father, well, then to some extent, we hand a portion of our authority over to them, which is honestly best because they know way better than us. But we still have some of our own authority, right? We still have, it's still our body. We can choose. If my wife says, hey, this, that, or the other, I could choose to ignore her. Will it hurt my marriage? Absolutely. Will it hurt our relationship? Absolutely. Will it hurt our trust? Absolutely. But could I still do it? Yeah, sure. I could do whatever I wanted. Start to think about the commandments in this manner, right? The Father, the Most High, has offered things. But with those things, there are strings attached, right? Well, if I'm going to do all of this stuff, then you need to do this. My children don't have a job, but they have chores. And those chores are the job that allows us to do extra things and buy them things and have fun and play and make food and keep a clean house, right? That's a quid pro quo, right? This for that, right? All right, you guys do all your chores. We'll go out and get some ice cream. All right, verse 5 says, do not deprive one another except with agreement for a time, to give yourselves to fasting and prayer and come together again so that Hasatan, the adversary, does not try you because of your lack of self-control. I say this as a concession, not a command. Remember, okay, so Paul's saying that intimate relationships with one another should not be withheld from the other unless there's a reason, like you're in fasting or you're in prayer or you're going through something. And then the other husband or wife, right, they should acknowledge that you're going through something and not just take advantage. But if it's full depravity, right, if it's fully taken off the plate, then it's saying, hey, the adversary could lead to try or tempt, right, for your lack of self control. So Paul is saying it's probably best that a man does not sleep with a woman. But because lacking self-control, the world, whoring, all these things, it's probably best that they marry and that they marry somebody that they like and care about and are willing to give a portion of authority over to that individual. And he says this, I have it highlighted in 6. He says, I say this as a concession, not a command. Paul's not speaking what the word of, this is the words of Paul, not the words of God. And I think about what I'm saying. Yes, this is scripture, and this is for reproof, and Paul has the Holy Spirit upon him, meaning that when he speaks, right, that his advice, Solomon, when Solomon spoke, the words that came out of his mouth were wise and good to keep. We read the book of Proverbs. If you go read the book of Proverbs, that is wisdom that is bestowed upon Solomon through the Most High. And Solomon speaks these words, but these words are good advice. If I look at somebody and say, hey, make sure when you get your paycheck, you pay yourself first. That's good advice. That's not evil. That's not bad. That's just good advice. Does that have anything to do with the Bible? No. Is there a Bible verse in the first book of money that we see? No. Maybe in Joel Osteen's church, but not in our scriptures. Right? So good advice is good advice. And this is what Paul is giving. Paul said, concerning the matters in which you wrote to me, I'm saying this as a concession. What's a concession? It's an act of yielding, granting a privilege, or giving up something to reach an agreement. Compromise. I'm not commanding that you do not marry. I'm not commanding that you do marry. I'm saying it's probably best that you find a wife or a husband because it's less temptations you have to face in the world. It's another person. And arguably, the Father did say it's not good for man to be alone. And that's why he gave man a helpmate, right? So it kind of is not really a command. It's a high recommendation, if you will, right? All right, 7. For I wish that all men were even as I myself, but each one has his own gift from Elohim, one in this way and another in that way. Think about what he's saying. Listen, there is a puzzle. And if I take a puzzle and that puzzle has 10 pieces or that puzzle has 10 million pieces, would any of those pieces be the exact same piece? No, they wouldn't. They never would. But altogether, they make the puzzle complete. So all of us are just one piece in a giant puzzle, and we are the exact shape and size and color that we need to be in order to fit where we need to fit in order for the picture that the Most High has painted to come to fruition, right? That's how we are. And this is what Paul's reminding. Everybody has their own gift. Everybody, right? 8, and I say to the unmarried and the widows, it is good for them that they remain alone, even as I am. But if they do not have the self-control, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn. Remember, Paul said, hey, all the stuff you wrote to me, I'm going to answer it. And this is a concession, not a command. This is something that you could do in an act of yielding or giving up or compromise. He says, 9, but if they do not have self-control, let them marry. Paul's like, yeah, it's probably best that they stay unmarried, right? This is Paul's opinion. But if they don't have self-control, then it's probably best they do marry. And to the married, 10, I command, right? Not I, but the master, that a wife should not separate from the husband. But if she indeed separated, let her remain unmarried or be restored in favor of the husband, and let a husband not send his wife away. Now he's saying, hey, if you do get married, remember there are rules, commandments, not that me, Paul, have given, but the master, right? The Father, They've given these commands. That if I do get married, right, I shouldn't just be sending away my wife. I should have a reason. Should be valid. 12. And to the rest I say, not the master. Paul, this is the issue with the Corinthians. There are a few times in the book of Corinthians where Paul says what Paul says, and then Paul says, hey, this actually isn't me, this is the Father or the Son. Or, hey, this is me. And if we don't pay attention to that shifting of who's saying what, then we'll get confused and go, oh, yeah, well, in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 13, this is what is command. This is the Bible. It's the scripture. So pay close attention to the paradigm shift. And you could honestly probably just maybe get two colors if this in your Bible's not all colored up. Probably could just get two colors and highlight one that says like what Paul is saying, and then highlight another that's like what the master or what the Father is saying. And then you can kind of see that where he goes back and forth. Because right now it's Paul. He says, and to the rest, I say, not the master. He says, if any brother has an unbelieving wife and she thinks well to live with him, let him not send her away. And a woman who has an unbelieving husband and he thinks well to let her live, let her not send him away. For the unbelieving husband has been set apart in the wife, and the unbelieving wife has been set apart in the husband. Otherwise, your children would be unclean. But now they are set apart. And if the unbelieving one separates, let him separate himself. A brother or a sister has not been enslaved in such matters, but the Father has called us to peace. So, we know, people, that this right here, right? This is the advice of Paul, but this is wise advice. This is advice, I believe, given to him that he gave to others, and it was given to him by the understanding of the Ruach HaKodesh Spirit of Truth. Because we know, people, that this exact thing has happened, where either the husband believes and the wife doesn't, or the wife believes and the husband doesn't, and in their belief, staying strong and learning and understanding and gaining in their relationship and being a witness, the husband or the wife has now come onto the scene, has seen and understood the power of the Most High and gone, what has happened is unexplainable to me and to my mind and to the reality of world. It could only be spiritual, right? Divine interceding, right? Like the Immaculate Conception, right? This can only be explained because there is a higher, greater authority and power. There is a God, there is a creator, and he has woven this stuff into it, right? There are people that we know that have gone through this. So, yes, this is Paul speaking, but just like when Solomon spoke wisdom, this is wisdom. This is wise speak. Verse 16, he says, for how do you know, O wife, whether you will save your husband? Or how do you know, O husband, whether you will save your wife? Only as Elohim has distributed to each one, as the master has called each one. So let him walk, and so I order it in all assemblies. Was anyone called while circumcised? Let him not become uncircumcised. Was anyone called while uncircumcised? Let him be circumcised. The circumcision is not, and the uncircumcision is not. But, highlight this if you don't have it highlighted, but the guarding of the commands of Elohim does matter. So, I say not the master. I say not the master. What is Paul really saying here? Is Paul saying that if somebody's circumcised, let them reverse the circumcision? And if someone was uncircumcised, let them become circumcised? Or is Paul saying, hey, if that ditch was shallow and long, and that guy's ditch was narrow and deep, it doesn't matter. If this guy was circumcised when he was called, great. Don't let him become somebody else. If this guy was uncircumcised while he was called, great. Don't force him to be like you. Because circumcision is not, and the uncircumcision is not. But the guarding of the commands of Elohim does matter. So we ask ourselves, okay, what is Paul saying? Is Paul saying that you don't need to be circumcised? No. Paul is saying when we're called how we are. And we don't need to look to our left and right and say, well, you need to be more, you need to do this, you need to do that. You got to do this. You can't have this, you can't do that. In due time, when we all come to the understanding that guarding the commands is important and it does matter, guess what? That circumcised person will most likely become circumcised in the flesh because they'll come across something that they'll see and go, wow, this is important. Something I thought was not important actually does matter. And it's taken me a little bit to read and understand and come to this conclusion and this knowledge, but it does matter. But if you were to force somebody into these things, most likely what would occur is pushback, right? So Paul in 20 says, let each one remain in the same calling in which he was called. Every single one of us, all right, I'm going to go back to the puzzle analogy. Every single one of us could be a recognizable piece, and we could be used to set other pieces in place. Are we setting them? Absolutely not. Did we make the pieces? Absolutely not. Could we be that piece? Like, oh wait, that's look, that's like the corner of that house right there, and that's like the only corner. And look, here's this piece. It's the only corner. Maybe we're that piece. And because of we've been established in the Messiah, now they're like, oh look, here's the look. That's what the roof looks like. Oh, this piece had the oh look, boom, and now all of a sudden that house has come into the play, right? All of those pieces have been connected because we were called out and we allowed ourselves to be ourselves. And then others were able to branch up with us. They were able to collect with us, right? And now the picture of that house has been discovered in this puzzle. Maybe, maybe somebody else is called, we're drawn unto them, and maybe we're not the corner of the house, but we're the doorknob that was discovered because 10 pieces were discovered, and now, oh, there's a doorknob. And that's okay. We don't need to be the piece that all of the other pieces jump onto. Like, well, if it wasn't for this person, well, that's a terrible saying. If it wasn't for the Messiah, is what we should say. All of us. We can say, oh, this person helped me greatly. And that's fine. If it wasn't for this person, I would have never known. No, if it wasn't for the master, you would have never known. If it wasn't for the Father revealing the master to you, you never would have known. We're going to see this later, right? Not just in Paul's writings. We're going to see this later. We need to give credit where credit's due, and credit is due all of it unto the master, all of it unto the Father, right? But we don't need to worry ourselves with, I like listening to good music. Man, listening to Sons of Korah, James Block, all these people we listen to. Man, I wish I could play piano. I wish I could play music and write songs. I can't. That would be cool if that was me. That's just not what he's called me to do. I can't. So I should just focus on what I am called unto doing and not try to force myself. I'm the corner of this house. I'm the doorknob. I shouldn't try to make myself the trees. That's somebody else's job and somebody else's calling. If I try to make myself those trees, well, then I've messed up the puzzle. I've forced somebody out of what they're trying to do because I've taken up their space. And now I'm just being confusing to everybody around. 21, he says, were you called while a slave? Remember, right? We talked about this last week. Slave, start using the word servant. It's just going to change your mindset. They're interchangeable. Servant. Were you called while a servant? It matters not to you. But if you are able to become free too, then rather use it. When you're called, where you're at, what you're doing, doesn't matter. But if you're able to be free to these things, then use it, right? All right. We're going to jump to 1 Samuel 15. All right. Think about what Paul said, right? You're called to a thing. Don't be trying to be something else. And this is 1 Samuel 15, verse 20. And Saul said unto Samuel, because I listened to the voice of the people. If you're there, highlight it. If you're not, make a note. Go back and read this whole story. Read this whole story because this is a very important story, right? Something that we never want to have to speak unto the Father or the Son, right? When you're being judged and Yeshua's standing face to face with you, you want to look at him like, well, I only did that because the people told me to. Because you know what his response would most likely be? Weird. I told you to do that. So you chose them over me. So then who do you think he's going to choose? Maybe them that listen to him over you? Just a thought. Samuel is standing in front of Saul, asking, what have you done? And Saul says, because I listened to the voice of the people. But I went the way by which the Father sent me, and I even brought Agag, king of the Amalek, and I destroyed Amalek. But the people, they took the spoils of the best flocks and herds out of which was destroyed to sacrifice before Yahweh Elohim in Galga. So in verse 20 and 21, what does Saul actually say? Well, it was the people that they asked me, and they were the ones who took the stuff. Like they took it so they could do the sacrifice. So Saul is basically putting it 100% on the people. Well, I went by the way which the Father sent me, and I brought the king of the Amalek, and I destroyed the Amalekites. That's what we were told, right? But the people, they kind of brought this stuff out. 22. And Samuel said, highlight, if you're there, highlight this. Does Yahweh take pleasure in whole burnt offerings and sacrifices as in hearing the words of Yahweh? Behold, obedience is better than a good sacrifice, and the listening than that of the fat of rams. So, hey, what did Paul just say? He said, but guarding the commands of Elohim is good. That which you have spoken, we will hear and do, Shema. Samuel is telling Saul, it's not about offerings and sacrifices and the fat of rams and lambs and others. That sounds kind of familiar, right? Almost like Paul said those words. But it is obedience. It is listening. It is hearing, Shema, the words of Yahweh. 23, for sin is as divination. Idols bring on pain and grief because you have rejected the word of Yahweh. This is gonna go right back to what Paul is saying here in a little bit. Idols bring on pain and grief because you have rejected the word of Yahweh. Revelation, the word of Yahweh. You have rejected the Messiah. Yahweh will also reject you from being king over Israel. Hosea 6. Verse 5, he says, therefore, I have mown down your prophets. I have slain them with the word of my mouth, and my judgment will go forth as light. For I will have mercy rather than sacrifice. Mercy rather than sacrifice. And the knowledge of Elohim rather than whole burnt offerings. But they are as a man transgressing a covenant. Okay, so Samuel is saying obedience over forgiveness, over sacrifice. Hosea, knowledge and obedience over sacrifice, over the offerings. I know we were just in 1 Samuel 15, but go back there. We read the ending of that conversation. Oh, that's Mike. That's actually wrong. I didn't edit that. That's Micah 6. Should be Micah 6, I believe. Let me look. Or is it Malachi 6? Sorry. Wherefore. Yeah, it's Micah 6, not 1 Samuel. You know, sometimes my wife gets in here and messes with stuff, so it's not always my decision. All right, so Micah 6, he says, wherewithal will I reach Yahweh and lay hold my Elohim most high? Shall I reach him by whole burnt offerings? By calves of a year old? Will Yahweh accept thousands of rams or tens of thousands of fat goats? Should I give my firstborn for ungodliness, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? Think about that. The fruit of my body for the sin of my soul. I'm going to go back and read this. How will I reach the Father? How can I lay a hold of my Elohim on Most High? Yahweh Tzivavot. Will I reach him by whole burnt offerings or by calves of a year? Will he accept thousands of rams or tens of thousands of fat goats? Should I give up my firstborn? Should I sacrifice the fruits of my body for the sins of my soul? I know how I'll reach him. I'll just do what I want and sacrifice tens of thousands of healthy fat goats. I know I'll do a whole bunch of burnout. I know I'll do calves of a year old. I know I'll give my firstborn. But verse 8, what does he say? Has it not been told to you? You're asking how and to reach the Father. Has it not been told to you? Oh man, what is good? Or what does Yahweh require of you? Do justice, love mercy, and be ready to walk with Yahweh your Elohim. How must I reach him? There you go. What does he require of you? Right? That's all the prophets. Now let's go into some words of Yeshua. It says in Matthew 9, and Yeshua, hearing this, said to them, those who are strong have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. But go and learn what this means. Dude, think about what the Messiah just said. It is not the healthy and strong that are in need of a physician, but it's the weak and sick. It's the broken. Go and learn what this means. So, this statement right here is your command by the Messiah to read the Bible. Go and learn what this means. I desire compassion, not offering. For I did not come to call the righteous to repentance, but sinners. The healthy do not need a doctor. The righteous do not need to be called into repentance because they understood that they were sinners, they were sick, they were weak. They have gone to the physician, the doctor, the healer, Yeshua Messiah. They have gotten strong and healthy, and now they are considered to be righteous. Go and learn what this means. Go read your Bible. Go and find out where he says, I desire compassion and not offering. We discussed these things, right? We discussed this verse specifically in last week's study. Matthew 12, again, he says, but I say to you that this place, there is one greater than the set apart place. And if you had known what this means, I go learn what this means. Well, if you had obeyed and gone and learned what this meant, I desire compassion, not offering, then you would have condemned the blameless. For the son of Adam, the son of man, is master of the Sabbath. So Yeshua told them, go and learn what this means. And later says, well, if you knew what this meant, right, then you wouldn't be in this situation. Now you can go read more of Matthew 12 for more context to see where that's at, but we got a lot of reading to do. So, all right. Back to 1 Corinthians. He says in verse 22, for he who is called in, there's that word in again, he who is called in the master while a servant is the master's freed man. Likewise, he who is called while free is a servant of Messiah. You were bought with a price. Do not become servants of men. So you were a servant or you were free. Doesn't matter what kind of ditch you were in. Yeshua paid for you to come out of that ditch. And in that, you are now a servant of Messiah. Do not return back to becoming a servant of men. 24, brothers, let each one remain with Elohim in the calling in which he was called. And concerning maidens, we're going to get to that word in a second. I have no command from the master, but I give judgment as one whom the master in his compassion has made trustworthy. What we talking about? Well, if you go to the Strongs and you can see that word right there, maidens is 3933 or 3833. 3933. Virgins. So when you see this word maidens, he's talking about virgins. Okay. And remember, we talked about this. Remember, Paul said, hey, in that letter you wrote to me, I'm going to give you my opinion. Some of this is straight up scripture, some of this is straight up commands, and some of this is there is no command, so I'm just going to tell you what I think. But what I'm saying is not just me as a man, it's me as someone who is found trustworthy to spread the good news and to give the gospel, someone who is enlightened with Ruach HaKodesh, right? He says, concerning the virgins, I have no command from the master, but I'm giving judgment, I'm giving my advice as one whom the master is in, and his compassion has made me trustworthy. So again, this is the opinion of Paul. But just like we're talking about Proverbs, some of this wisdom is good and profitable for us. 26. I think then that this is good. I think, see how I highlighted that? I think Paul is speaking on behalf of him. Then that is good, which of the present necessity. That is good for a man to remain as he is. I think it's best for these things to occur. Are you bound to a wife? Do you seek to be loosened? Are you loosened from a wife? And do you seek a wife? But even if you should marry, you have not sinned. And if a virgin should marry, she has not sinned. But such will have pressure in the flesh, but I would spare you, right? Now he's going back to that idea. It's probably better that we be married, so it's one less thing we have to be tempted with. 29. And I say this, brothers, the time is short, so that from now on, even those who have wives should be as though they had none, and those who weep as though they did not weep, and those who rejoice as they did not rejoice, and those who buy as though they did not possess, and those who use this world as not misusing it. For the scene of this world is passing away. He's saying, hey guys, there's a lot in your life. And in my opinion, I think instead of worrying about a lot of these things of the world, I think you should focus on the master. And if you're sad, get over yourself, focus on the master. And if you're happy and you're rejoicing and you got all this stuff, great, focus on the master. And if you're in this world trying to figure out how to use it and how to climb up the ranks, focus on the master. Because this world is passing away. Remember, if our foundation is in Yeshua, the starter home that we now call a shed that was falling apart doesn't matter. Because it was built on the foundation of Yeshua. And when the fire comes, our terrible building skills will be clear to everybody, but our foundation skills will also be clear because our foundation was in Yeshua Messiah. And we'll be standing there after the burning is done on our foundation, Yeshua Messiah, alive. And that is the goal. That's not the goal, but that is the important thing to remember. And that's words that should comfort us. Well, everything I might have built could crumble around me, but at the end of the day, I'll still have the master and I'll be with him. Yeah, Job. Mizuki said Job. In the end, Job lost everything, but he still had the master. And he recognized that. And he took comfort in that. 32. I wish you be without concern. He who is unmarried is concerned about the matters of the master, how to please his master. Like I said, Paul's advice. I think if you were unmarried, you could focus on the master because you wouldn't have a wife to worry about or a husband. He says, but he who is married is concerned about the matters of this world, how to please his wife. There's a difference between a wife and a maiden. The unmarried woman is concerned about the matters of the master, that she might be set apart in both body and spirit. But he who is married is concerned about the matters of this world, how to please her husband. Listen, oh, I'm a part of this church. And like the church just acquires so much of me. And I got to do this stuff. Not biblical, not found in the Bible. It's not really helping my soul or my spirit, but the church kind of requires it. So I'm focused on the matters of the church, not pleasing the master, but pleasing the church. Apply this to literally anything, anything in your life. Well, my job, they kind of need me to do this stuff. Like, I kind of got to do that. It's like my job. I got to do this stuff. Okay, but the master's telling you to do this. Yeah, but he'll understand because he knows my heart. Who are we pleasing? 35. And I say this. I say this. This is Paul speaking. I say this for your own good, not to put a restraint on you, but for what is proper, and to attend to the master without distraction. Paul's saying it's probably best you remain unmarried if you're not tempted into intimate things. It's probably best you remain unmarried because if you can remain unmarried, then guess what? You have more time and more attention to focus on the master. But if you're married, you're more worried about worldly things and duties of a husband or duties of a wife. That's Paul's opinion. 36. And if anyone thinks he is behaving improperly toward his maiden, if she has passed the flower of her youth, and so it should be, let him do what he desires. For he does not sin, let them marry. Sorry. But he who stands steadfast in his heart, having no necessity, and has authority over his own desire, and has so decided in his heart to guard his own maiden, he does well. So then he who gives her in marriage does well, but he who does not give her in marriage does better. A wife is bound by Torah as long as the husband lives. And if her husband dies, she is free to be married to whom she desires, only in the master. So remember, Paul's going back and forth. This is what I say. This is what the Father says. This is what I say. This is what the Master says. This is what I say. This is what the Torah says. Right? Now, we must pay close attention to this because Paul switches quickly and unannounced. He says, a wife is bound by Torah as long as her husband lives, and if her husband dies, she is free to be married to whom she desires, only in the master. But she's better off if she remains as is, according to my opinion. The Torah says that if a woman and a husband married, husband dies, she, because the husband dies, is eligible to go out and remarry. But Paul is saying, I think it's better if she just stays as a widow. In Paul's opinion, it's better to stay as a widow. The Torah says she can go remarry. It says, and I think I also have the spirit of Elohim. So Paul's like, hey, I know this is my opinion, but I'm giving you my opinion because I do feel that I have the spirit of the Most High in me. The spirit of Elohim, the spirit of truth, the comforter. I believe I have it. So when I'm saying my opinion, I believe it's inspired. That's what Paul's saying here. But if we don't read all of it, and we do what a lot of the world does, you see that comma after as she is? Well, they could put a dot, 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 dot. and not include the rest of verse 40. This is very common. And then we can wrap this up into a sermon and we can say, well, a wife, according to the law of the Jews, is bound by her husband as long as her husband lives. But if her husband dies, then of course she can go get remarried, but she's better off to remain a widow. And now the words of Paul, by the unlearned, the unwise, the untaught, have been twisted to their own self-destruction. And anybody that does not use that time to go back into it and say, where does it say in the law of the Jews that a husband dies, that she can be remarried? You can Google that. And then you're going to go, okay, well, I guess it's not the law of the Jews. It's the commands that the Father gave to the Jews. And then you're like, oh, wait, actually, he didn't give it to the Jews. They're actually, the Jews are a very small portion of people that he gave this. He gave it to a lot of people, right? And then you have that snowball effect. So Paul, right here, according to my opinion, it's better. And I can say this because I believe I have the spirit of truth within me. So, what is Paul really saying in chapter 7, right? He's saying we shouldn't concern ourselves with the lifestyle or the gifts or the calling of others, right? Because comparison is the thief of joy. You will never enjoy anything if you're always comparing it to somebody or something else. It will rob the joy out of that thing, right? If somebody else, right? If one of my children become musically super talented and they can sing and they can write songs, I can either enjoy that with them or I can go, well, if I could play too and it'll probably sound pretty good. They sound okay. I wouldn't be able to enjoy their songs because I'd be comparing my skills and whatever to them. And I look at somebody else, well, they were, the master called them out to go travel all over the world and to help people. Like, I could go help people and travel the world. Or you could just do what you were called to do, which could be talking to random people that you didn't even recognize or realize, and then change the lives of 1,000 people that turn their lives to the Messiah. But you had no idea because you were just that kind of initial floodgate, right? You just unlocked the door and then walked away and went around the corner, and you never saw what came out of that door. You have a huge part, you just didn't see it. But if you're not enjoying the part that you've been given, right, you might miss it. So Paul's not telling us that we should or should not be married. He's telling us that we should be as we are and as we are called to be. If you truly felt that you were called by the Father to not marry, then I guess don't marry. Don't have children. But if you felt like you were called to the Father to do this, then that's what you should do. And just in chapter 7, if Paul was against the Torah, then why in the world would he bring it so much? And why would he rely on it as the example? And we're going to see this more, right? This is not just for 7, but this is all of Paul's letters. All right, chapter 8. Remember, we talked about the in 1 Samuel 15, for sin is as divination, idols bring on pain and grief. Because you've rejected the word of Yahweh, he will also reject you. Idols bring on pain and grief. Remember that. So, as concerning food offered unto idols, what do you think that food could bring you? Because you are learned in the word, you are wise in the scriptures. What do you think that the food offered to idols would bring you? Maybe pain and grief? I don't know. We'll see. We know that we will all have knowledge. That we all have knowledge. Knowledge puffs up, and love builds up. If anyone thinks that he knows somewhat, he does not yet know as he should know. But if anyone loves the Father, this one is known by him. So then, concerning the eating of food offered to idols, we know that an idol is no matter at all in the world, and there is no other Elohim but one. Now, to understand what Paul is talking about, you have to do some history and some research. In the courtyards and the markets of Corinth, Galatia, Thessalonica, all of these coastal places, what they would do is they would take their animal and they could probably sell it for X amount of money. But if they took that animal and they sacrificed it to one of the gods, they dedicated it to one of their gods in a temple, then they go into the market and now they can sell that meat for more. Why? Well, this animal, this ram was dedicated to this god and it will grant you these abilities. Oh, so now it's not just a rack of a lamb or a lamb shoulder. This is a lamb shoulder that will make me super fertile. So they can get it more. So this whole foods offered unto idols was very prevalent. It was very popular, and most of the meat in the market was offered to idols because it yields a higher price. They can sell it for much, not just meat, it's a special meat. It's enchanted meat. But Paul's saying, we know that all this nonsense, because think about it, Paul's going in and he's assimilating. He's meeting the people where they're at. He's got down into their ditch and he's going, why in the world are you eating this? Oh, well, this is going to help me have children. It's going to help my wife. We can't have children. If I keep giving her this food to this God, well, then she'll be super fertile and we'll have children. And Paul's like, dude, there is no other God but the Father. There is no other Elohim but one. Why are you putting your trust and your faith in this silly nonsense? Verse 5. Even if there are so-called mighty ones, either in heaven or on the earth, as there are many mighty ones and many masters. For us there is one Elohim, the Father, from whom all came and from whom we live, and one Master, Yeshua Messiah, through whom all came and through all we live. If you don't have this highlighted or circled, highlight this. This is kind of important. He's saying, okay, so instead of you going to the Most High through the Son and saying, please give me a child, you're going to go to these other mighty ones? So you have a bunch of masters? I don't believe that. There's one Father and there's one Master. And through those, the Father and the Master, all came to be. However, not all have this knowledge, but some, being aware of the idol, until now eat it as having been offered unto an idol. So their conscience being weak is defiled. They don't understand that there is one Master and there is one Father. They have the understanding and knowledge that there's a lot of masters and a lot of gods. And because of this, they have a weak conscience and they are defiling themselves. But food does not commend us into Elohim, for we are none the better if we eat, nor any worse for not eating. Nowhere in the Bible does the Father say, oh, if you go eat this kind of food and this style of stuff, you're just going to be super blessed and you're going to be this and this. There are food and not food. There is food and then there is not food. That's what the Father tells us. This is the stuff I've given unto you for food, and this is the stuff that I've told you do not eat. That's it. All the food is nutrient. All of it does different things for our body, but he doesn't say specifically, oh, if you're trying to get pregnant or you're trying to get a six pack or you're trying to build muscle or you're trying to, he doesn't say that. Verse 9, but look to it, lest somehow this right of yours becomes a stumbling block to those who are weak. For if anyone sees you who have knowledge eating in an idol's place, will not his conscience, if he's weak, be built up to eat the food offered to idols? So this weak brother for whom Messiah died will perish through your knowledge. Oh my goodness. Please highlight and circle 9, 10, and 11. Do 12 and 13. He says, okay, so now here you are, a believer in the Messiah. And I go into Sunday keeping, very modern, not really biblical, modern Christian church, okay? A progressive church. And I go partake in prayers with these people. And I go partake in studies with these people. And I attend this service. Someone whose their conscience is weak, someone whose faith is weak and young and brittle, they might see me and believe that this thing is good and acceptable, and what's being taught, and what's being preached, and what's being spoken, and what's being promoted is good. And that person will die in their sin because you chose to do this thing. Bet you nobody's ever said Paul said this. I go, oh, well, I just, my family's going to be there. My friends are going to be there. We're going to go to my church. I know it's Christmas and they got a Christmas tree up and they're going to hand out gifts and they're going to do this. But somebody saw you walk away from the church. And when they saw you walk away from the church, you said, this is not scripture. I'm going to find somewhere that follows the Bible and puts the Bible and the Father and the Son before all. And they see you attending this Christmas ceremony. And they're building up the courage to step away. And they see this and they think, I must be in the right place. A spirit, not the spirit of truth, a spirit has spoken. I feel the spirit with me, and it has told me that this thing's okay and acceptable. And now that person dies. Yeshua died for that person, and your knowledge has killed that person. Because their foundation no longer did they jump to the Messiah's foundation. They remained in that man's foundation. Verse 12, now sinning in this way against the brothers and wounding their weak conscience, you sin against Messiah. Remember, we talked about this a while ago. When David takes Bathsheba and Nathan comes up to him and speaks to him and says, you're that evil man. You've taken that lamb and you've killed it when you had all these lambs yourself. And the first thing David says, I've sinned against the Lord. I have sinned against Yahweh. Paul is bringing up that idea. You have done evil upon your brother, but this evil that is a sin against your brother, you're really sinning against the Messiah. David understood that. His sins against Bathsheba and Uriah were really also sins against the Father. It says 13, therefore, if food makes my brother stumble, I am never again going to eat meat lest I make my brother stumble. It's simple. We don't attend these religious holidays because that's what they are. They're religious holidays. Easter is a religious holiday where they worship Ishtar. Christmas is a religious holiday where they worship Nimrod, Tammuz. That's what that is. That's a religious holiday. And if we attend those religious holidays, we can then make our brothers and sisters who are young early in the Messiah perish because of our acceptance or attendance. We don't know what people are struggling with, but if we walk in his ways, we'll never make a brother stumble or a sister stumble. And if we're walking in ways, he'll enlighten us and give us understanding and say, hey, this brother, this sister is struggling with this thing. Do not do this thing in front of them or with them, or acknowledge this as something okay and acceptable. Paul says, I believe I have the spirit of Elohim. Therefore, when I'm giving you my advice, I feel as though I'm giving you advice that the spirit of truth is putting into my mouth to put into your ears. And if we're walking in his ways, then eventually our mouth and our hand will be his mouth and his hand. And he will use us, right? Because he's in us. And because part of our authority, our body's not our own, but we share it. All right, chapter 9. He says, am I not an emissary? Am I not free? Have I not seen Yeshua Messiah Master? Are you not my work in the Master? If to others I am not an emissary, I certainly am to you. For you are the seal of my office as the emissary of the Master. Again, Paul is not concerned with what others believe. Remember, Yeshua looks to the disciples and says, who do the people say I am? And they said, well, some say Elijah, some say you're a prophet. And he says, okay, I don't really care what they say. He says, and who do you say I am? And Peter says, you are Yeshua Messiah. You are the son of Elohim. How does Yeshua respond? This knowledge is not from flesh and blood, but the Spirit of my Father. Only my Father could have revealed this knowledge unto you. Paul's saying, you know I'm an emissary, and the Father has revealed this unto you. So do not worry and fret about others. And you are the proof of my work in the Messiah. 3. My defense to those who examine me is this. Do we not have a right to eat and drink? Do we not have a right to take along a sister, a wife, as do all the other emissaries and the brothers of the master and Caiaphas? Or do only Barnabas and I have no right to refrain from working? Who serves as a soldier at his own expense? Who plants a vineyard and does not eat of its fruit? Who shepherds a flock and does not feed from the milk of the flock? Do I say this as a man? We're getting back into, he's going to start jumping back and forth. Paul's saying, I can benefit from my work. You are my work, meaning I can benefit from you. I have a right to eat and drink, and I have a right to take along people with me, just like everybody else does. Does a soldier pay his way to be a soldier? Does the one who plants a vineyard never get to eat the fruit? Does a shepherd who shepherds a flock not use the milk? And if you're wondering, like, what? Go watch a movie of Shepherds in the Mountains, because you know what they do when they wake up? They grab one of their sheep or cattle, they milk it, and then they usually boil it and heat it up, and they drink warm milk like every morning. That's just a normal thing. So Paul's saying, do I say this as a man? Or does not the Torah say the same? For it's been written in the Torah of Moshe, you will not muzzle an ox while it treads out the grain. Is it about oxen that Elohim is concerned? Think about this. Going back again, Paul's going back again to the Torah, saying, we were commanded that we are not to muzzle an ox while it treads out the grain. Well, if you're a farmer and you've been around this stuff, you understand what's being said here. But I didn't know what it was saying, so I had to research this stuff. I had to understand this stuff, right? So, real quick, let's go back to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 24. And I want you to think about where this is placed, right? Well, I'm going to use the restroom really quick while you flip there. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. So, Deuteronomy 24. Think about what's being said, okay? I'm going to read some that doesn't sound like it applies, but think about it. Verse 1, he says, and if there should be a dispute between man, and they should come forward to judgment, and the judges judge, and justify the righteous and condemn the wicked, then it will come to pass, if the unrighteous should be worthy of stripes, you will lay him down before the judges, and they will scourge him before them according to his iniquity. That's 25. Guys, it's not my own authority, okay? Somebody else in this house that lives with me. Sorry, guys. It says 25 out there. So if the unrighteous is found to be worthy of stripes, then they'll lay him down before the judges. They'll scourge him before them according to his iniquity. And they will scourge him with 40 stripes in number. And they will afflict no more than what is owed. If you should scourge him with more than what is beyond, then the righteous one will be disgraced before you. Right? So, what is owed? Punishment, reward, no more, no less. Then this little thing that says, you shall not muzzle the ox that treads out the corn. So, before they had, and I'm not a farmer, so just bear with me, grain mills that grind the corn up and separate the corn, right? Do you guys remember Ruth? You guys remember Ruth? What is Ruth doing when she's discovered? Threshing floor. They're smashing the wheat on the ground to separate the grains from the stalks. That's what they're doing. What can you do? You can take an ox or horse or cattle, and they can stomp on the corn, on the grains, and separate it. If we muzzle it, that ox cannot, or that animal cannot benefit from its work. Paul says, does the one who plants the vineyard not eat of its fruit? Does the shepherd who shepherds the flock not feed of the milk? Does the soldier have to pay his own way? No, that's not right. That's not justifiable. That is not being paid. That is not being a reward, right? That's withholding the reward. If I muzzle the ox, what can an ox not do with a muzzle? Eat. Well, the ox is just out there treading out the grain. It's doing a job for you. And if you muzzle it, it can never bend down to benefit some of its work. Never be rewarded for its work. So is it fair to the ox? It's doing all of the work, and to not have it the small reward of being able to bend down and eat some of the grain? But in reality, he's saying, is an ox what he's really concerned with? Is it really about oxen that the Father's concerned? So Paul's saying in the Torah, it says, don't muzzle an ox while it treads out the grain. But is he really talking about animals, or is he talking about us? Right? Should we plant this vineyard in our backyard and never benefit from it? No, that's silly. We should. He said, verse 10, or does he say it all because of us? So is he really concerned about oxen, or does he say it because he's concerned about us? For this was written because of us, that he who plows should plow in expectation, and the thresher in expectation of sharing. Ruth, being a thresher, right? She should expect to be rewarded or paid for her duty of separating it. There's a Little House on the Prairie episode where hail comes, the stalks are up, they're drying out, and hail comes and breaks them all over. So now they've all fallen on the ground, and now they're all mixed up. So instead of being able to gather them and bind them up into sheaths and tie them up, and they take the sheaths, it looks like a big broom, and they smash the sheaths, and they can, be separating 30 or more bushes at once. Now everything's laid down. They have to collect them all up and try to gather them. But if you just Google that Little House on the Prairie, that's exactly what Ruth was doing. And that's exactly what Paul's saying. Does the one who's separating this, because you only have so much time, they can't get wet or else it'll ruin it. Eventually the stalk will break and they'll fall over. So this was not something that like one person does. This was like a community thing. Like there were more hands here that needed to harvest this wheat quickly. So do they not work in expectation of a reward? That's what we're getting at. The Torah is not necessarily a book of rules. It's guys, this is what should be expected of you if you're a worker. Well, what does a worker look like? What does a worker do? How does a worker handle? How do these things occur? Well, let's go back to the book and let's see what the worker does and how the worker handles the situation. And 11, if we have sown spiritual seed among you, is it too much if we reap material goods from you? Remember this statement, because we're going to get to it in a second. Paul's going to elaborate on it a little bit, and we're going to go outside it. We're going to go outside of Paul to kind of look at this. So Paul's like, hey, if it's fair for them to get some, is it not fair for us if we're sowing spiritual seeds? He's saying if others share authority over you, should not rather we? But we have not used this authority, but we have put up with all, lest we hinder the good news of Messiah. Remember, a couple weeks ago, Paul said, We've never taken anything from you. Could we have? Absolutely. Could we have used our authorities? We are here sent by the Messiah. You must give us these things. Yeah, they could have easily done that. People do that all the time, and people fall for that all the time. We see it in these mega churches. If you tithe, then God will heal you and make your bank account big and give you that car and that boat and that job and that promotion. We see that all the time. Paul's saying we are justified in seeking physical compensation for the spiritual seeding that we are giving, right? But have we? No, we have not. 13, he says, do you not know that those serving in the set apart place eat from the set apart place? That's the showbread. And those attending the altar have their share of offerings from the altar. Go read before Samuel, young Samuel, the prophet Eli or Heli, depending on Septuagint or ISR. Look what his sons are doing. His sons are taking more than their share of the offerings. And the people are like, hey, you're not supposed to do that. And his sons say, well, who's going to sacrifice for you if we don't? So you're kind of, shut up and go away. Can't really say anything. 14. So also the master instituted that those announcing the good news should live from the good news. We're going to read that. Highlight that. 14. The master instituted. Yeshua said, those announcing the good news will live from the good news. But I have used none of these, nor have I written this, that which should be done to me. For it would be better for me to die than that anyone should make my boasting empty. When I first started reading and understanding the words of Paul, and I started really thinking about what he's saying, this is part of the reason why I said that as long as this group or this ministry thing that I have, we will not accept tithes or anything like that. Because I understand what Paul is saying, and I agree with what Paul is saying, and I think what he's saying is very important. There are churches all over the world that pry on the weak, that pry on the needy, that pry on the not confident believer in the Messiah. And that leads to destruction. And I want to build up the confidence, and I want to build the belief, and I want to build up the knowledge of the body. I don't want to take from the body. And that's exactly what Paul is saying. He doesn't want to take from the body. He wants to bring the good news, and that he's not boasting in it. He's not gaining from it. Yeshua said those announcing the good news should live from the good news. But Paul is saying, I'm finding another way to live, and I'm still promoting the good news so that others cannot look at me and say, well, yeah, look at these pastors who are driving freaking Lamborghinis and Ferraris, living in $1 million mansions. They are benefiting from the word. Most of it's not the word, it's their word. But there is a little bit of the word in their word. And they are benefiting from that. And you can't take those people seriously. When I see a mega pastor saying they need to collect money to help the homeless and the widow and the orphan and the poor and the needy and the hungry, I wouldn't be able to stand in a room and look at them seriously when they jump into their $200,000 car and drive to their $3.4 million home. What are you talking about, man? Sell your home and feed more than this church could gather in years. What are we saying here? You can't take those people seriously. He says, for if I bring the good news, it's not boasting for me, for necessity is laid upon me. And it is woe for me that I do not bring the good news. And that's how these people should be. They should be like, man, it's painful that I cannot bring the good news. For I do this voluntarily, I have a reward. But if not voluntarily, I am entrusted with the management. What then is my reward? That in bringing the good news, I should offer the good news of Messiah without cost, so as to not abuse my authority in the good news. So, What is my reward? What is Paul's reward? Bringing the good news of the Messiah without cost, so that I could never abuse my authority in the good news. And this is why we'll never take a tithe from anybody, because I do not want to abuse what minuscule, small amount of authority that I feel has been handed to me to announce the good news to people. Because every bit of corruption started with a single dollar. Every corrupt pastor started with a single first donation, single dollar, single penny. Every corrupt pastor started with a penny. And should we let, right? Like, this is such a good saying, right? Says, I'm going back. Where is it? The fruit of my body for the sin of my soul. The fruit of my body, is it better that the fruit of my body gains because of the sin of my soul? Think about that. So, Paul said something in here. He said, the master instituted that those announcing the good news should live from the good news. So let's jump to the book of Matthew, chapter 10, where the master instituted this, right? Where the master said this. It says, verse 5, Yeshua sent out these 12, having commanded them. So here we have a command from the master saying, do not go in the way of the Gentiles and do not enter in the city of Samaria, but rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as you go, proclaim, saying, the reign of the heavens has drawn near. The good news. Heal the sick, cleanse the leper, raise the dead, cast out demons. You have received without paying. Give without being paid. Go and do these things and expect nothing in return. 9, do not acquire gold or silver, copper, or money for your money belts, or a bag for your journey, or 2 pairs of clothes, or an extra pair of sandals, or staffs, for the worker is worthy of his food. So this is where Yeshua institutes. Those preaching the good news will live by the good news. A worthy worker will earn and gain his food. 11, whatever city or village you enter, ask, who is worthy? And go and stay there until you leave. And as you enter into a house, greet it. And if the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. And if it's not worthy, then let your peace return unto you. Whosoever does not receive you or hear your words, when you leave that house or the city, shake off the dust from your feet. Truly I say to you, that it will be more bearable for the people of Sodom and Gomorrah in that day of judgment than the city. See, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. Therefore be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. But be aware of men, for they will deliver you up to the Sanhedrins and flog you, beat you in their congregations. And you will be brought before governors and kings for my sake, as a witness to them and to the Gentiles. You will be brought before these people as a witness for me. But when they deliver you, not if, when they deliver you, do not worry about what you should speak, for it will be given to you in that hour which you will speak. For it is not you who will speak, but the Spirit of Elohim, the Spirit of your Father, speaking in you. And brother will deliver brother to death, and father his child, and the children will rise up against their parents and put them to death. and you will be hated by all for my name's sake, but he who will have endured to the end will be saved. And when they persecute you in this city, flee to another, for truly I say, you will by no means have gone through the cities of Israel before the Son of Adam returns. So, right here, we see Yeshua saying a lot. But this is where Yeshua says, those who are preaching the good news will live by the good news. So, let's jump back into 9. Let's try to understand what Paul's saying. This goes a little bit back to that. For circumcision is not, and uncircumcision is not. Right? He says, for though I am free from all, I have made myself a servant to all in order to win more. And to the Jews, I became as a Jew, that I might win the Jews. To those who are under the Torah, as under the Torah, so I can win those who are under the Torah. And to those without the Torah, as without the Torah. So did Paul forsake the Torah to go to those who didn't have the Torah? No, let's read it. To those without the Torah, I became as those without the Torah. Not being without Torah toward Elohim, but under the Torah of Messiah, so as to win those who are without the Torah. No, I did not forsake the Torah of the Father, but I was under the Torah of the Master. I was under the law of the Master. Remember, who is Yeshua eating with when the council comes up? The Pharisees and the Sadducees and the scribes, they see Yeshua eating with sinners, Gentiles, evil, not good people. And that's when Yeshua said, who needs a doctor? Is it the healthy, strong one? Is it or is it the sick one? Well, if I go, oh, I cannot go to those people for their evil. They're just heathens. Or is Paul saying, we went with the protection. We went witnessing the Torah of the Father. I can go to a barbecue place, right? That's a pork belly barbecue place, and sit down with people and break bread with them and witness them about keeping the Torah, about keeping the dietary laws, and also talk to them about the Messiah, right? Even though they're eating a pulled pork sandwich, right? That's someone without the Torah, but I can go to them in the place they're at and not going against the Torah, still break bread with them, correct? And that's what Paul's saying. To the weak I became weak, so as to win the weak. To all men I have become all, so as to save some by all means. He's assimilating. He's going to these people. He's jumping into the ditch with them, knowing the master will pull him out, hoping the master will pull them out. Why is he doing all of this? Because the good news, so as to become a fellow partaker with it. We jump into the ditch of the sinner so we can show them the master that's pulling us out in hopes that that they'll accept him and the master will pull them out. And guess what? We're out of that ditch. We're no longer in the place in which you were found. You go to a new place. You have a new life. That old one died, and the old you is left in the ditch. And the new you is the one that was pulled out of that ditch. You think it's wise to go back down there, to remain back there with your old dead body? Or to jump in somebody else's ditch? Or do you think it's wise that we then stay on the path so we don't fall back into another ditch? He says, 24, do you not know that those who run a race indeed all run, but once receives a prize, but one receives the prize? Run in such a way as to obtain it. He's not saying, guys, it doesn't matter if you're first or last. He's saying, run this race so that you can be first, so that you can be the one that receives the prize. Think about that. We're not doing this so that we can just be a participation trophy, right? Oh, I was there. No, we're running this race so that we win. 25. Everyone who competes controls himself in every way. Now they do it to receive a corruptible crown, but we for an incorruptible crown. We don't care about the physical prize. We care about the spiritual prize. Therefore, I run according and not with uncertainty. Think about that. Paul runs knowing what the prize is, knowing what the reward is, not like, well, man, I wonder what we're going to get. Like, once we finish this job, I wonder what we're going to get. He runs knowing what he's going to get. He says, thus I fight not as one who beats the air, but I treat my body severely and I make it my servant, so that when I have proclaimed to others, I myself might be rejected. His body is serving so that when he needs to, he can reject the body. Oh, all they serve in this restaurant is pork? Well, I'll just go hungry, but I'll still stay here and speak the good news. I'm rejecting my bodily needs so that when I'm ready, I can proclaim what the master has says. And I'm not worried about, oh no, I'm in this ditch, because I know he'll pull me out. I've run this race knowing what I will receive, and I'm running it in order to receive it, not just to run the race. Not because, well, I don't really know what we get, but I think we might get something cool. So we talked about the wisdom of Solomon. So let's go back here into Proverbs chapter 3. He says, in that verse 19, Yahweh founded the earth by wisdom. Sorry. He established the heavens by understanding. By his knowledge, the depths were broken up, and clouds dropped down dew. My son, let them not depart from your eyes. Watch over sound wisdom and discretion. Then they become life to your being and adorning around your neck. Wisdom and understanding. Let them become life. 23. Then you will walk safely in your way, and your foot would not stumble. What did Paul say? Therefore, when I run accordingly. I know what I'm getting. I'm not running in uncertainty. Then if you have wisdom and understanding, then you'll walk safely. You'll walk confidently, as another translation says. Right? Brenton says, you'll walk confidently in your way, and your foot will not stumble or trip. When you lie down, you do not need to be afraid. And you will lie down, and your sleep will be sweet. Do not be afraid of sudden dread, nor of the ruin of the wrong when it comes. For Yahweh is at your side, and he will guard your foot from being caught. Paul's not running, I wonder, I hope. Paul's running knowing. Paul's laying down knowing. Paul's sleeping knowing. Whether he's in a prison, on the side of the road, getting hoisted down a basket, running for his life, Paul's knowing. He's not afraid. Remember when the Spirit says, once you enter Jerusalem, or once you enter here, this is it. And the disciples are like, Paul, once you go back there, you're done. And Paul said, so be it. If this is my end, then this is my end. So be it. I have a job to do. Right? So we talked about this. Paul knows the reward and he's running to obtain it. Proverb tells us if we walk in his ways with wisdom and understanding, then we're safe. We can sleep and not worry. We can wake and not worry. Bad things are happening and we don't have to worry about them. Matthew chapter 20. We're getting there. I know it's a little long. We're wrapping up. Sorry, guys. Matthew chapter 20. He says, for the reign of the heavens is like a man, a householder, who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. And when he had agreed with the workers for a silver piece, he sent them into the vineyard. Cool. I got some guys to work. Realized it wasn't enough. And the third hour he went out and he saw others standing idly in the marketplace and said, you too go in the vineyard, and whatever is right, I will give you. Remember, the first workers go agreeing on a silver piece. And the next workers, he says, whatever is right, I will give you. And they went, having gone out about the 6th hour and the 9th hour, and he did likewise. So he goes out again and again. And then again at the 11th hour, having gone out, he finds people standing and says, why do you stand here idle all day? And they said, because no one's hired us. And he says to them, you too go into the vineyard, and whatever is right you will receive. So think about this. He goes, he has a conversation, he enters into an agreement with the first workers, and they said, a silver piece is worth a day's work. And they agree upon it, and they go to work. And then at the 3rd hour, and then at the 6th hour, and then at the 9th hour, and then at the 11th hour, he goes out and gathers more workers and says, whatever is right, I will give you. Verse 8. And when it came evening, the master of the vineyard said to his manager, call all the workers in and pay them their wages, beginning with the last guys, the 11th hour guys, and then ending with the first guys, those guys who we called in the beginning of the day. And when those came who were hired the 11th hour, they each received a silver piece. And when the first came, they thought, oh, we're going to receive so much more. We've been doing this so much longer. We're working so much harder. We're going to get about to get a payday. But then they also receive a silver piece. And when they received it, they grumbled against the householder, saying, these last have worked only 1 hour, and they've made it equal. You have made them equal to us, who have bore the burden of the heat all day. We've been out here all day, and you paid these guys the same. 13. But he, answering, said, did I do you wrong, friend? Did we not agree that your work for the day was worth 1 piece of silver? So take yours and go. But I wish to give this to the last man as also I give to you. Is it not right for me to do what I wish with my own? Or is your eye evil because I am good? Thus the last will be first and the first last. For many are called, but few are chosen. So the father, the master of the vineyard, he agrees. This is your reward. And the people said, this reward is good. We agree to it. But now here we are in the final hours, and someone's coming, and now that reward is too great for them, or now their reward, which was previously agreed upon, is too little. Well, in the beginning of the day, this was a good reward, and now all of a sudden it's evil. Why are you concerning yourself with what I do with what I have, which was my own? Is it because you are looking at me with evil? I think we'll stop here because we still have like 10 more slides left and we got a decent amount of reading. So We'll just blank out these last two, right? So to wrap it up, if you can, I think you should, because it will help you reread First Corinthians in Aramaic. Specifically, remember last week I said, hey, read 7 in Aramaic because I think it'll help you understand and look at a different viewpoint. Read 8, 9, read all of it back in Aramaic. All of Paul's letters should be read in the Aramaic because there's a lot of places where it makes more sense. All right, but what is Paul saying? Do not concern yourselves with others' lives. Oh man, those guys came in the final hour and they get a piece of silver, but me and you agreed silver was worth your wages. And I could also give these guys a piece of silver too. You said this was worthy. That's good in my eyes. And now it's evil? If we compare ourselves to others, we might see that they've gotten the same reward and feel cheated because we feel we've done more work, which is going to eat away at our joy. Right? The Father has called you specifically for a reason, and He called somebody else for a different reason. Assimilating is not evil. Assimilating is not evil. And in most cases, it should be done in order to bring the good news correctly. So when Paul says, as to the weak, I became weak. As to those under the Torah, I became under the Torah. As to those who are not under the Torah, I did not forsake the Torah, but I went to them where they were. Right? Now, there is a fine line with this. Like we were talking. I can't be like, oh, yeah, I'm actually the strip club pastor. I just go to the strip clubs to find these broken young women so I can bring them to the master. But I'm only going to these places so I can further the kingdom. Well, you're a liar and there is no good in you. Right? You're a liar and there is no good in you. So obviously, assimilating can be evil, right? But us going to others and meeting others where they are, jumping into their ditch, again, knowing the master will pull us out, hoping the master will bring them along. Nothing wrong with that. We're not supposed to stay in that ditch, and they're not supposed to stay in that ditch. And when we get pulled out, we should be avoiding that ditch. Like Paul said, if I realize that ditch is alcohol and my brother's stuck in the alcohol ditch, I don't drink alcohol around him, near him, promote it, speak about it, praise it. I don't do that lest I cause him to stumble. Paul used meat. I'm using alcohol. Enter whatever it is that is pulling that person into that ditch that you're trying to assist them, right? Withholding what is right is evil. Even if it doesn't seem right in your eyes, withholding what is right is evil. Yoking the ox while it stomps out the wheat is evil. Not allowing someone to benefit from their labors is evil. Right? We shouldn't be withholding that. Even if it doesn't seem right in your eyes, it's evil. Right? The last two, these last two about the rock being the guiding of his father's people, you probably don't understand because we didn't read that part. And we can't serve two masters. Right? And that's also what we're going to read about in chapter 10. But I'm really hoping that you guys are able to now better understand what Paul is saying and what he's not saying. And that sometimes it's actually what Paul is saying and it's not what the Father's saying. Right? It's not, Paul's not saying you are commanded to never marry. No, Paul said, in my opinion, I think it's best that you remain unmarried so you can focus on the master. But that's my opinion. That's what Paul says. right? To the unlearned, the untaught, the unwise, they could easily take that out of context and say, you're not supposed to be married. And by picking and choosing and literally pecking at the words of Paul, we can create some messed up doctrine where we're not supposed to be married. And that it's evil in the eyes of the Most High. That's can be done. And probably is done and has been done and will be done. Right? For there's nothing new under the sun. So we'll wrap it up right here. We'll pick up chapter 10 next week. We'll start with chapter 10 next week. Any questions or comments or anything that anybody has they'd like to throw in there? Oh yeah, next week's off. Yeah, so the week after next, we'll pick up and then we will wrap up First Corinthians. And I do not think we will get into Second Corinthians because Kenny is coming back probably middle of July, second, third week in July. And we will be going into a Revelation study. And that Revelation study is probably going to last about 30 weeks. So it's going to be a long and very good and hopefully fruitful study. So we will wrap up in the next month, the month of June, we'll be wrapping up First Corinthians. And we'll put the letters of Paul on a little brief pause. We'll jump into Revelation. We'll do a huge Revelation study. And then after the Revelation study, we'll pick back up in the letters of Paul and we'll probably wrap up the letters of Paul. So just a little heads up. All right, I'll end the recording.